Hey, how's it going? It's 3:45 in the morning. Just watched The Mandalorian, Chapter 15, and you know, I'm really getting tired of making videos that don't age well. I spend this whole video talking about a Boba Fett helmet, and let me just tell you, after watching the new episode, no spoilers, but I wanna cry. Hey everyone, how's it going? Ross here at MGF Customs, back after a very eventful week of Boba Fett returning and a Disney Investors Conference that wound up blowing all of us away, to share with you a new update on my upcoming custom LEGO Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 2 second showcase featuring Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan, and now Boba Fett. So for the past week, I have essentially just been working on all three of these characters, Ahsoka earlier on in the week and Bo-Katan tonight, who I will be showing a little bit later on at the end of the video if you want to stick around to see those a little bit. However, for the most part, I have been working on Boba Fett. After doing a lot of preliminary sculpting work, I wanted to change up the process a little bit and get to work on painting this guy. But before I was able to get started on the most notorious bounty hunter in the galaxy and his new dad bod, I did have to prepare this helmet quite a bit. Now, I didn't necessarily film a lot of this, and you can already see kind of the paint job here, but I'm trying to cover it up. But as you can see, inside of the helmet, I had to drill and grind out the whole inside of this piece, because this helmet, which was a base piece by WM Minifigures, a knockoff brand, was a little bit too tight and certainly was not going to accommodate a fully painted Tamira Morrison head with all the painted scarring that I'm going to have to do in the near future here. So it needed to be hollowed out. And let me tell you, it's not difficult drilling out the inside of a LEGO helmet. It is more difficult to safely and cleanly remove all of the shavings and bits of plastic that get stuck all in there. And it got to the point where I was actually using my water pick, which is basically a water flosser and a little mini handheld water hose, to blast out as much as I could instead of trying to do it with paintbrushes by hand, and that was really tedious. But what was also really tedious, in addition to that whole process, which already took up the majority of the day when I was doing this, it was also inserting a little tab of Procreate inside the helmet, because it is hollow at first. The base WM Minifigures helmet actually is hollow with the T-visor, like classic LEGO Star Wars minifigures, where you essentially had to put the helmet over a black head, as I'm sure many of you guys remember. And so that wasn't going to fly either. And so it became this sort of balance between grinding out the inside of the helmet, after doing that for like pretty much the entirety of an afternoon and into the evening, and then also inserting Procreate inside the helmet to fill in that visor while still making it accommodating to a painted head. And while doing this, I even had a dummy painted head that I was working with, that I essentially lathered up in black and then would twist the helmet around onto to see if the paint would come off or not. And then eventually, when the paint wasn't coming off, that's when I inserted the Procreate tab behind the back of the T-visor to fill it in. But let me tell you, it was not easy, and it took at least 3 to 4 attempts. Getting it in there was already kind of challenging, but then I also wound up gluing the corners of it in place so that it would stay in place while I worked with it and removed bits of Procreate from inside the helmet. It was all very challenging, very tedious, and not easy to pull off, but ultimately worth it in the end, as it achieved essentially what I consider to be one of the best Boba Fett helmets this community has seen. Not necessarily in the work I did to it, but just in terms of the overall base shape and base design of it from WM Minifigures. But then I was able to, of course, move on to the painting process, and I got started by filling in the visor with a base layer of glue to keep everything in place, but then also a little bit of gloss paint on top of that. But then on top of that as well, I had to fix some damaged areas, and then I got to work though on painting the base mixed dark sand green color that I made myself for Boba's helmet here, and really really Boba's armor. And I was originally kind of skeptical of this color that I had mixed. I wasn't entirely sure if this was going to work because of course it generally just looked a little bit brighter without all the battle damage, so I thought that maybe this wasn't the right color. And you know, applying this base color was pretty straightforward. Obviously applying base colors usually is, just so long as you're watching out for debris and any other little particles that aren't, you know, getting in there. And so once all of that was applied, I was of course able to start getting to work with the battle damage. And this is where things got a little bit tricky, because if you look at Boba's helmet in The Mandalorian and really in general, he's got like not just silver damage all over it, but also there's like some deep dark gunmetal durasteel type, like, you know, like gashes behind the silver damage. And so what was essentially required in addition to the silver metal damage was also gunmetal damage that had to go on in certain areas before the silver. And not only did I achieve that by painting on some gunmetal in certain areas like around the T-visor, but one big part of the process, as you've already been kind of seeing, is essentially to dab little bits of paint onto my finger, silver and gunmetal, and just dab those all over the helmet to achieve this speckled effect using both colors. And this is certainly something that has to be done in moderation. You kind of have to keep a balanced look all over the helmet, and that was really important to make sure I didn't go overboard. And as a matter of fact, on the front of the helmet, I did eventually, after doing all of this, wind up essentially removing some of it with some additional sand green and dark red, because it did start to look a little bit more silver than green, and you don't want that. So keeping a healthy balance of all of these effects is definitely really important. But I also did drill in the iconic dent that was left there, of course, by Cad Bane, seemingly. That's not really canon yet, but we can assume that was still the case. And so finally getting to drill that in place was really exciting, and something that you have to be kind of careful with when doing this, because it's very easy to go overboard drilling a little marking like this into a LEGO helmet. But one thing that I certainly did not account for when painting Boba Fett's helmet was also ultimately the yellow stripes that I had to do at the end of this process. I kind of forgot about them, and then essentially had to kind of clear away a space of sand green and then just paint all these on individually, and that was a little bit tedious. I've done things like that before though, so it wasn't anything I haven't done already in the past. The rangefinder that you've been seeing throughout all of these segments is totally temporary, by the way. I have some much better rangefinders on the way from AV Figures, so huge thanks to one of my patrons, actually Patrick Starr over on Patreon, for suggesting that I use those rangefinders. I didn't even know Andrew offered such pieces, and they look great, and I cannot wait for those. However, now here we are at the end of the video, now that I'm done with Boba Fett's helmet. And an observation that I made kind of wrapping up here with the Boba Fett helmet was that I never actually made a custom Boba Fett in all my years customizing. Like, I did decals and, you know, kind of added custom arms and legs to LEGO's pre-existing Boba Fett minifigures, but this is the first Boba Fett helmet I think I've ever painted, which was kind of a wild realization for me. Regardless, of course, Boba Fett is not the only minifigure I'm doing in this showcase. I'm also actively working on Ahsoka, Tano, and let me tell you, the process of getting these headtails, you know, the Montrals and the Leku right has been really tedious, because, you know, just kind of adding Procreate, then sanding, adding Procreate, then sanding, you know, kind of sanding away too much, and then adding more Procreate, then sanding. You know, this is really the process of doing this, and just constantly trying to make it as accurate as I can has definitely been a slow process. I haven't even gotten to the headband yet on the front, as I'm sure you've been able to notice, or the headtail piece on the back, so still a long ways to go, even with Ahsoka's headtail sculpt, before I can even get to painting. And also I'll be painting my own face for Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka, and this is really still in the very, very early stages. Now, I have been working on Bo-Katan a lot more this week. I got these really amazing casts from Aaron, LM9 Productions, in. These were actually his sculpts that were then casted by Forge 510 and then sold through LEGO Star Wars Fanatics, and I will be using one of these Bo-Katan helmets for my custom Mando Season 2 bow, and I just cannot wait. The sculpt is coming together really, really well, and if you'd like to see the full sculpt along with all my progress on Bo-Katan, that is available over on Patreon right now. But otherwise, that is going to do it for this video, guys, and let's go ahead and begin to wrap this up. Alright everyone, and there you go. That is going to do it for this update video toward my next Mandalorian Season 2 showcase video. Thank you all so much for being so patient with me and for watching this entire video. I know it can get frustrating when either not a lot of progress is necessarily made, or when I just kind of of disappear into my customizing corner for a week. But I appreciate all of you so much, and if you'd like to consider supporting the channel, again, you can always catch me over on Patreon, posting all the progress toward these custom minifigures and every future custom minifigure. And I am just really excited to continue with these and do some really cool new edits over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook if you'd like to otherwise catch me there. I'm going to be doing a Spider-Verse edit in celebration of what is potentially going to be the live-action Spider-Verse film with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield returning, so I think that'll be a fun photo to design in LEGO pretty soon here. And then on top of that, I'm on TikTok as well. That's a thing that I've been doing that's been kind of popping off a bit recently, which is pretty cool. So yeah, but otherwise, guys, I guess I will see you soon. I don't know in what video, but regardless, thank you again. Stay safe. Keep creating. May the Force be with you. This is the way.